All the arts are not separate, they're all the same. They're all after the same thing. And that's to reach some kind of ideal, some kind of place of comfort, some place of joy, some place of compassion, empathy. All of those wonderful things are involved in making art. There's nothing negative in making art. When there is, then there's something, I think, amiss. I guess it's political when I say my paintings are about civility. When art appears, things always get better. And anyone who gets involved in the arts and who it touches, it changes them. And they have a better sense of themselves. Art is always about healing in some manner or other. I'm a painter. And I never responded to sculpture. And all my work is about expanding the parameters of painting. I sort of work in themes and series, and when I think I've exhausted it, or just simply get tired of it, I'll shift over to something else, because one always leads to another. This recent show at the Hudson River Museum was really it was a boon. It was quite wonderful. I think I've always loved that museum, and it was very active with the New York art scene for a long time. It didn't try to give a retrospective. It just took work that I had in my studio here since I moved to Yonkers, by the way, but there were some very big pieces that I myself have not seen. They had been in storage for a long time. It was nice to get them out again. They were aggressive at the time. They were aggressive beauty, so to speak. There are 5 different series in this room. And only one acrylic, which is really interesting. Everything else is on paper. For the last 10 years, I've done nothing but gouache paintings. And I don't know if I want to stop. Gouache is water-based, and when you put a color over a color, it never goes over completely, but it lets that underground come through, and they look like frescoes at some point, and it was the most beautiful surface, I thought. I mean, it could have been from my trip to Italy many years ago, of seeing all of these outrageous paintings in Florence. And all of these things I'm talking about were very condemned by formalist painting, which was less is more, etc. So this was all kind of breaking through, and it was all like new, fresh ground. It started to make me really realize about design and how important designing is, not only in these, but in all of painting, and I see design everywhere. And of course, flatness, which is very 20th century, and which I love, and it's the concept of formalism, which I rejected heartily, I thought, even after having these conversations with Clement Greenberg. I actually then went back to one of the concepts of formalism, which is the beauty of materials. And with gouache, it became even more emphasized. And the fact that the work is always trying to end up being about beauty and about caring and about compassion and evoking all of those emotions. But I'm very much a chameleon. I see something and somehow it stays in there. And your brain's a camera anyway, so you don't ever... You take a picture of everything you see and you don't even know it's always there. This comes from a retreat that I did at a place called Soaring Gardens in Pennsylvania. I had a little studio right on the ground, and there were all these flowers, but then there were these crows that kept coming in. It started to develop into the the whole idea of doing watercolors with crows on flatness, on patterns. This was the first one. This was the late series. This was a very interesting series to do for me because it started out, I really didn't know why I was doing it. It was rather unconscious. And it happened after the 9/11 thing. After all of us grieving, and feeling tremendously awful. And the fact that this ended up on a black field was, I thought, pretty significant. But it's funny how your unconscious really kind of takes over at times. It's a very powerful force. I didn't want to put hate in my studio. I wanted, that as soon as you paint hate, you glorify it, and it has no room for me. And now these are all the celestial paintings. Like out in the Hamptons one night, I stepped outside in the moonlight and there were hundreds of fireflies. And there was a summer mist in the air. It was like in a Walt Disney movie. It was so beautiful. It's like, wow, this isn't real, I felt I was touched that night, like someone had done something magnificent for me, just by allowing me to be there and see that. And so I was trying to specifically make the whole thing all sky. So when I decided to put the curtains in, I just lightly drew them in with white, as if they were transparent. And with, all the ornamentation is about moons, or symbols of skies and moons. Basically, I've kind of moved from the moon, which is basically our planet, into the universe, which is everyone's. This immensity is all ours. And this is now a celestial painting, which is beyond just what we see from Earth, that is close to us. And this starts going into the universe. I think of the whole Earth as one modulating mass, and that everything on it creates it, and everything on it is important and should be exactly where it is. And there's a variation on the same thing. And the space falls so differently when you have all of those little things. Well, they look like jewels to me, It's like the night. It's like night is wearing her jewels. And they all have borders. And for a very specific reason. It's to stop it from going on endlessly. I want each painting to end. So I'm saying I'm taking just a little section of this enormous immensity and showing how beautiful just that little section is. And also, I never want you to forget that these are on paper and these are painted, and the surface is so important. This is called the Big Comet and the Green Rabbit Nebula. I wanted the borders even stronger than they were on the others, and this cuts them off, so it's I'm almost domesticating the sky, and that this can even look like a tablecloth. Do you see the green rabbit? With the infinity sign on his paw. Yeah, this was done earlier than the last one you saw. And it's almost the entire sky is the stars. But this kind of the way they play with the comets, and the wonderful kind of lyrical elegance that happens up there. See, there's getting back to big patterns. This is what I really liked about them. And flattening out the sky into patterns. It's just more dramatic. And it's no longer about the sky. It's like motifs rather than it. I'm just going to put this up because I'm going to probably work on it a little bit. That's all about pattern. Each new series is an expanse somehow. The sky's the limit, and it's still going.